Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Joe Henderson, and presenting with me is Lizette Garcia and Sandra Ramos. Today, we are going to be looking at a proposal for Malaysia, exploring the renewable energy and green tech industry, well as the electronics and semiconductor supply chain. And without further ado, Lizette.
Hi, I'm Lisette. So I'll be starting off by giving you guys a brief context on Malaysia. Malaysia is a country that is focused in its economic stability, in which they're pushing towards its modernization through renewable energy. An example of this would be Malaysia's initiative of smart cities. It is considered a high power distance culture, meaning that they follow a strict structure of authority. And they are also a multicultural country, reason why it also can be challenging to have leniency with policies and regulations within firms and industries. So, Malaysia has committed to an ambitious long-term goal of transitioning towards renewable energy by the year of 2050. And as a US firm working with these industries, there are some risk factors that need to be taken into consideration, and those would be found in different areas, which we will be discussing in the following slide. So, for political and legal, the government is trying to create more battery energy storage systems. And in order to do so, they will be implementing stricter regulations to these manufacturers, ensuring that they're not going to be violating any laws or environmental laws that they have. Malaysia is currently in charge of 13% of the global market for semiconductor packaging, assembly, and testing. Because they are pushing for this renewable energy project, it's created many job opportunities. So, in fact, in 2024, there were about 440 new job openings. And as I mentioned previously, Malaysia is developing these smart cities, which they're made with the intention of reducing overcrowding and environment degradation. And in order to build these cities, there's like energy digitalization that will be supporting decarbonization.
So the firm's potential for competitive positioning in Malaysia can be assessed using Porter's industry-based models of the five forces. This framework helps evaluate industry attractiveness, competitive pressure, risk exposure, and opportunity before making strategic decisions. In the renewable energy and green tech industries, the rivalry amongst existing competitors and bargaining power of buyers is very high, leading to increased risk due to the high amount of competitors in the region and the high intensity behind pricing structures and negotiations. The threat to new entrants is moderately high, still leading risks due to the increased demand for renewable solutions, but many other emerging companies and resources are positioned a little better. Thankfully, the bargaining power of suppliers and threats to substitutes are low and do not pose an immediate high risk. When it comes to the electronics and semiconductor supply chain, thankfully, none of the five forces indicate any high levels of risk, with rivalry amongst existing competitors being a moderate risk that remains. Forces all pose a low risk and always the company to leverage its way into a prominent position amongst buyers and suppliers, along with a minimal threat to substitutions available in the semiconductor industry.
Malaysia is considered a geopolitically sensitive and state-influenced environment with a cultural profile classified within the Southeast Asia cultural cluster of diverse multi-ethnic nation and culturally distinct norms. Under the Globe framework, Malaysia's score is low in assertiveness, implying that direct communication, valuing relationship first, preserving face, maintaining dignity and respect and harmony. Direct confrontation, aggressive bargaining, or public criticism is culturally prohibited. With a high power distance, decisions authority is concentrated at levels of hierarchy and difference as senior leadership in government and corporate settings. indicating that Malaysians have a strong acceptance and expectations for leaders to make decisions hierarchically and accept responsibility for outcomes. Strong in-group collectivism, preference for building trust through long-term relationships, and success is viewed through the lens of the group, family, company, or ethnicity. Over transactional efficiency and harmony over individual achievement. High humane orientation, expectations that the firm contributes to societal and national goals. As a society that values fairness, altruism, politeness, social responsibility, and concern for others. These dimensions reveal the importance of cultural alignment in a deeply embedded environment that prioritizes indirect communication, hierarchical differences, and relationship preservation for successful operations. Negotiation in Malaysia requires prioritizing government sovereignty, long-term commitments, respecting strategic autonomy, and alignment with its socioeconomic priorities rather than purely transactional incentives. Renewable energy and green tech, um, before any dis discussions, before any business discussions, preparations start with an introduction through a third party. Initiating a focus on building long-term partnerships, respecting this designated hierarchical channels and government incentives as the government plays a significant role in this sector. Following the framing proposal, discussions as a collaborative opportunity for long-term commitments and in terms of adding value to Malaysian stakeholders. Approval depends on alignment with national sustainability, energy security, and community objectives. Electronics and semiconductor supply chain industry. Amidst the attention of the semiconductor war between the US and China, Malaysia positioned itself to remain a neutral technological hub as a middle power broker. Malaysian policymakers view the sector as a national capacity building asset central to economic upgrading, workforce development, technology transfer, and supply chains resilience. To gain a durable competitive advantage in this high sensitive geopolitical environment requires cultural competence, prioritizing government sovereignty, respecting strategic autonomy, and aligning with national and industrial industry over financial incentives. Perception Perceptions of the US in Malaysia is neither uniformly positive or negative. Indeed, it's context dependent and stakeholder specific. Government actors and business elites respect the US technologically advanced, global market integration, capital strength, and as an economically valuable partner. Increasing concern over US policy instability, export controls, and economic unpredictability. Public and media have an admiration for US innovation and education, but they have skepticism towards US geopolitical intentions and global behaviors. These per, these perceptions create a distance during negotiations, particularly in high-value industries such as advanced manufacturing, semiconductors, and renewable energy technology. Understanding and managing these perceptions is a strategic necessity.
So, first, after completing a SWOT analysis and examining some of the further information around renewable energy and green tech, some of the most strategic options would be to treat both industries as separate entities, as these are going to be two different dual industries to explore. However, as expressed to treating Malaysia as one uniform market, these two industries need to be treated separately. So, for renewable energy in particular, the first option is to invest and expand. This would involve developing large scale solar projects, battery storage systems, and corporate renewable energy solutions like power purchase agreements. The company could also establish a local research and development hub to adapt its technology to Malaysia's climate and potentially expand it into other Asian markets. This strategy makes sense because Malaysia has strong government support for renewable energy, rising demand, and clear alignment with ESG goals. The second option is to hedge risk by partnering. The US firm could enter the market through joint ventures with local firms or government linked companies and use a phased investment approach, starting with smaller pilot projects before scaling up. This is especially important in Malaysia because business success is often dependent on relationships and local networks. Partnering helps reduce regulatory risk, builds trust, and lowers upfront financial exposure. The third option is to pause or reduce investment if government incentives weaken or financing conditions become far less favorable. The company could delay large projects and focus only on smaller, low risk opportunities. In more extreme situations, it may be even better to consider exiting the market. This is only because the renewable energy projects rely heavily on stable policy and long term returns. For semiconductors, the first option is to invest and expand, particularly in areas like assembly, testing, and packaging. Malaysia already has a strong ecosystem in these areas, and global demand continues to grow due to AI, electrical vehicles, and digital technologies. This would allow the company to tap into a high growth industry while leveraging existing infrastructure. The second and most recommended option is to hedge risk through partnerships. This means forming alliances or joint ventures with local firms and focusing on midstream activities instead of building expensive fabrication plants. This approach helps the company avoid direct competition with major global players like TSMC and Samsung Electronics, while still benefiting from Malaysia's role in the global supply chain. The final option is to pause or reduce involvement, especially in high cost or highly competitive segments like semiconductor fabrication. If geopolitical tensions increase and supply chains risk become too high, the company could scale back or exit certain operations. This is most important because the semiconductor industry is extremely volatile and capital intensive. So overall, these strategic options show what both industries offer strong opportunities. They require very different approaches as they cannot be a dual facing industry and need to be treated separately. One focus on growth and expansion, and the other focus on managing risk through partnerships.
All right, so after the analysis conducted, we agreed on the following recommendations. So, for the renewable energy and green technology industry, we recommend that they adopt hedging strategies and partnerships via joint ventures. This would basically allow or avoid direct price competition with foreigner suppliers such as China. And then for electronics and semiconductor supply chain, we suggest that they increase their production capacity and that they invest in local research and development. This would help them gain and maintain competitive edge. So essentially, this would allow them to maintain its stance as the sixth largest exporter in the semiconductor market.
Thank you so much for joining us today as we go through opportunities in Malaysia with the renewable energy and green tech industries, as well as the electronics and semiconductor supply chain. My name is Joe, again, joined by Sandra and Lizette, and we thank you for your time.